Hello, welcome to News Desk. I am Amisi Nyamiche Thompson. Top stories this hour. Finance Minister Dr. Ato Forson to table bills for tax cuts in the 2025 budget later in Parliament for the immediate repeal.
I'll be going to Parliament to submit the bills. And I expect Parliament to take them under certificate of urgency. If they do, tomorrow, repealing the taxes will be 1 clause each.
We'll also hear reviews of the budget from the business community. Also coming up, we're in court on the disputed Akwatia parliamentary seat as the Supreme Court gets ready to rule on High Court decision. We'll also get our tabs on former Sanitation Minister Cecilia Dapa, who is also back in court this morning. And on our climate focus today, poultry farmers embrace cooling techniques and tree planting to combat heat stress and also boost livelihoods. Do stay for details. And this morning, Finance Minister Dr. Ato Forson will later today lay critical bills before Parliament to formalize the scrapping of select taxes outlined in the 2025 budget to ease the financial burden on businesses and individuals. Dr. Ato Forson on Tuesday, while presenting the budget, announced the abolition of the e-levy, emission and lottery winnings and betting taxes. Later on PM Express, or yesterday on PM Express, with Evans Mensah, the Finance Minister said that government is committed to fostering economic growth and providing the much-needed relief for Ghanaians.
Tomorrow morning, I'll be going to Parliament to submit the bills. And I expect Parliament to take them under certificate of urgency. If they do, tomorrow, repealing the taxes will be 1 clause each. So, and I'm repealing the betting tax, for example, is very easy. The e-levy, all of those things that you are repealing, quite easy. I believe Parliament will be able to take it through certificate of urgency. And if they do, His Excellency the President will sign them immediately. And immediately we'll have the relief.
So tomorrow you specifically request for it to be treated as under secret agency?
I request it. It is part of the... Because it's a revenue bill, and under the Constitution, you have a leeway to lay finance bills under certificate of urgency.
Do you have the backing of your 183 members?
Oh, yes.
Are they still happy?
Oh, yes. You saw it today. And as for the backing of the NDC majority caucus, we have it 100%. So
it's very likely that by the close of tomorrow, these would have taken effect?
It's very likely that tomorrow I will lay it. And I'm hopeful that Parliament will immediately act. I can't preempt Parliament. I know the rules have been there for years and I've served as a leader of that House before. So I don't want to preempt what Parliament will do. But I can assure you that I'll do my bit tomorrow. I'll submit it to Parliament. And looking at the agency involved, I'm hopeful that Parliament will take it through the various stages and approve it for us. As part of the bill that they introduced that became law, in January 2024, there is non-life insurance, including vehicles. So I said, the other insurance, such as, you have different types of insurance. You have marine insurance and different types of insurance. They are largely patronized by companies. And most of these companies, they are VAT registered. And they'll be able to offset their input VAT with output VAT. And the incidence will not be on individuals. But if you introduce VAT on motor vehicles, the incidence will be on the trotro driver, on the taxi driver, on the Uber driver. So even if you are going to implement such a policy, the first thing you need to do is to exempt the ordinary person, the person who is running a taxi, the person who is running trotro, the person who, by the grace of God, has been able to buy a vehicle, and that person needs to buy insurance. You don't want to make it punitive so that such a person will not even buy the insurance at all. So I felt, based on the analysis, the incidence on the motor vehicle VAT will be on the ordinary Ghanaian. And it is better you exempt that and allow the policy to go. And that is why I deliberately zoomed in on that one. And also the amount of money involved.
How much was it?
It's about 20-something million. Based on the analysis that they gave to us, that you allow that to go. Because when the noise around it, it's more or less a nuisance tax, and it's not worthwhile. So allow that to go, and rather allow the companies to pay, because they will be able to offset their input VAT with their output VAT. And the companies are not complaining, they want to pay anyway.
Mm.
And you heard the Finance Minister, Dr. Ato Forson, on aspects of the taxes and VRA on the budget. Let's get into the conversation with our guest here on News Desk. We have Professor Michael Ayamga, who is a development economist. We also have Amma Jampo, CEO, Ghana Venture Capital and Equity Association. We have Andrews Bediakon, local governance expert, and Dr. Nanaya Wedichum, who is spokesperson on the Economy for Movement for Change. Well, we also have Daniel Botche, who represents NUGS as its president. Let me start with you, Amma. The 2025 budget proposes the removal of certain taxes to ease the burden on businesses from the private sector point of view. Do you believe the cuts will significantly improve investment and business growth, or there are other structural challenges that need to be addressed?
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having us. I think we need to really address some of the root cause problems that we've been seeing cycles of a lot across the years. These are not new problems. We're very keen to really put forward a local capital first approach. So when it comes to supporting investment, we do so much for foreign investors to come into the country, give them a lot of incentives and promote international investment. But we need to come down to the fact that local investment needs to be encouraged. And so if we're not dealing with the fundamentals of the economy to drive local investor confidence, to drive up venture capital interest and investor confidence in private equity, building up entrepreneurs and their ventures that can actually grow the economy and provide jobs for people, look at the way that we substitute importation for local production. These are all fundamentals that we need to really look at in terms of the root causes of why we are not doing well as an economy. We've been talking for years about, our trade imbalance, the fact that we import so much, we're so import dependent, our rates of inflation, depreciation, it's a vicious cycle. So I think we need to really do a lot more to go further to promote local investment and boost local finance through the pension funds, institutional investors, and the entire private equity and venture capital association to drive economic growth through our local businesses and industries.
Well, Amma, the Finance Minister also highlighted strategies to stabilize the cedi and control inflation. Given past economic trends, do you think these measures are enough to create a more predictable business environment?
I think we need to be a lot more ambitious and bold and really look again at the root causes of what our structural economy is looking like right now. I'm not an economist. I'm representing the Venture Capital Association, and so local investment is going to be really important for us to do to build upon a stronger foundation. And so everything that is required to buttress that and promote local investments will then go on to attract international investments and maybe help us with our trade deficits. And of course, the government needs to really look at how we can reduce spending. And so that's the view for the industry, where I said local investment industry.
Now let me come to you, Professor Ayamga. With the uncapping of the GETFund, government is prioritizing education and infrastructure. How do you see this impacting the private sector, particularly in job creation, human capital development, and also business opportunities?
Yes, thank you for having us. Yesterday, it was quite an exciting day for some of us. I didn't expect that I would see those taxes going. My fear was that if we were going to take up all those taxes, how were we going to plug the hole? And then the Minister of Finance actually put a stroke of genius by looking onto the tax refund account to deal with that. Yes, if you look at the quantums that have been given, you may say much could have been done. But we are dealing with an economy that is in serious distress, and we have to take that in mind. For 2024, we behaved as if the debt restructuring was debt forgiveness, and we didn't actually leave any buffers or plan towards the repayment of these debts. And if you put the next 4 years together, in current value terms, we have to be paying about 22% of our GDP to debt. You cannot sustainably do that and provide incentives for private sector unless we are creative. So yesterday, it was indicative that the government wants to support the private sector, wants to make the business environment more friendly. And look at it from the consumer side, taking away the e-levy, the COVID levy, and even the betting tax is going to improve disposable income from the consumer side. That's going to raise demand. And if you are in industry, you have to be happy with that. Industry itself should be happy that at least the COVID levy is gone. There is a huge discrepancy between what they are actually paying and what reflects in the books. But in the long run, we have to take a first step and then build on that. For the uncapping of the GETFund, I also again had my doubts that it will really come to given the enormity of the debt restructuring on the economy going forward. But uncapping the GETFund means that, let's take it this way, you are building your house and you know how much resources you have. It will allow for quality control, it will allow for investment. You know how much you are getting and what the shortfall is. It is not the usual, let me see, is there something, can you take something from here? All those things have been unplanned, and it often leads to knee-jerk solutions and no proper planning in terms of how to manage education. It can provide some stability in terms of infrastructure provision, and I believe that those in the construction industry, businesses must be happy that at least we can know what is coming in and what we need to make up for shortfalls in terms of education. So yesterday I felt quite excited that even though it is in education, it's going to, in the end, provide better stability in terms of how we manage infrastructure in education. I'm one of the staunch critics of the current education system, and that is because I have been dealing with the students that come in from secondary schools, and I told somebody that it is very laborious to teach them, very difficult to teach them, because I've never seen a generation poorly prepared for a tertiary education like we are having now.
Right.
So for us to take those bold steps towards stabilizing investment in education, to me, made my day as someone in the education sector.
Well, let me come in and bring in Daniel Poultry into this conversation, since we're talking about the uncapping of the GETFund. Daniel, what do you think? It's good news for you, isn't it? Do we have Daniel Poultry on the line?
Yes.
Great. Let's hear from you.
It is exciting news, and very, very exciting news. National Union of Ghana Students have been advocating for the uncapping of GETFund for the past 3 years. This is because GETFund, as a setup, is the main source of funding for education infrastructure in this country. And for that reason, NUCS, after seeing the effect of the capping, has been advocating for years. For the past 3 years, actually, we've had series of picketing protests in the previous government to press up demand. When you go around almost every educational institution in this country, from the pre-tertiary and the tertiary institutions, you find several GETFund infrastructure projects uncompleted. Most of them started during the somewhere 2012, 2015, and it had been left there because there was no money, capped. The GETFund capped, and even what was left was also collateralized, and so it was difficult for GETFund to get money to complete these projects. However, we were excited with this uncapping, and we had initially proposed. We know that yes, there must be funding for free SHS, and so when the uncapping came, but directed towards free SHS, it brought a lot of mixed feelings because free SHS is also key for us, and we are interested in it. At the same time, we are also interested in education infrastructure. And so we have already started engaging. If you follow the education forum that have been going on, Nooks has been a strong advocate for the keeping of free SHS. But we have proposed that if it was possible, we should look at looking for an additional source of funding so that free SHS comes to stay, but not affect education infrastructure. And so we are still engaging. We are excited about the uncapping. But at this stage, we are seeing it as the status quo still remaining because the challenge of education infrastructure, which was caused by the capping of GETFund and taking money out of GETFund into the consolidated fund, has not fully and entirely been solved because the money coming back to the GETFund is still allocated, almost all of it is still allocated to free SHS. And so money is not really being made available for education infrastructure.
Well, Daniel, let me come in here. I know that the uncapping of the GETFund, gives access to more funding. At least there are 3 sources of funding to the GETFund, the budget as well as also the VAT and other donor agencies funding the GETFund. And so, removing the cap gives you a wide access to funding, and you still want more added for the free senior high school. How does that marry?
Yeah, so as a point of correction, GETFund is only funded by 2.5% of GETFund. There is no budget allocation or donor agencies. Yes, donor agencies fund portions of the budget of the government of Ghana for education and other things. But when it comes to GETFund, which is directly dedicated to education infrastructure, it is strictly 2.5% of GETFund. And it is portion of that which was capped since 2017 and being used for other aspects of government financing, which Nooks has been against all these years. And so we were of the view that once that money was coming back, it should go back to funding infrastructure. Now, one other good thing that this budget does is the collateralized amount, which was the amount that was left for GETFund after the capping, which was collateralized, which was almost around 55%, is being absorbed by government as government debt, which means that right now, GETFund, yes, indeed, under this budget, will have more money. But if you go around the country, like I do, and you go and see the education infrastructure that have stalled all over the country, we will need even far more to complete all these dormitories, classroom blocks, and the rest across the country. Right.
Thank you so much, Daniel Boche. Well, we've also been speaking to Ahmad Jampo, CEO of Ghana Venture Capital and Equity Association, and Professor Ayamga, who is a development economist. Well, let's come into the studio now and speak to Dr. Nanaya Oduchum. He's spokesperson on economy and for the Movement for Change, and also get his initial reaction to this. We also have in the studio Dr. Andrews Bediako, who is a local governance expert. Welcome, gentlemen, to desk. Let me start with you, Movement for Change. I know you've been out of the space for a little bit, but let's get to the budget. We'll come to what Movement for Change is doing currently. Yeah. Your initial reactions from yesterday's presentation.
Thank you, Mami. But just to also draw your attention that we've not left the scene. If you recall, about 3 weeks ago, we had a press conference and we outlined what we describe as our inputs or recommendations to the finance minister.
All right.
So there are some bits and pieces here and there that he picked from our press conference, and I could also say that he picked a couple of policy prescriptions for our great transformation.
You mean the finance minister?
Yeah, the finance minister.
Oh, wow. He consulted you. Well, he did wider consultations.
Yeah, we never had
went to the
consultation with the government.
So you mean he picked from what you said?
We did a press conference as good citizens of Ghana, and you know, if you follow our narrative, we are interested in the progressive nature of our Ghanaian economy because we believe that the overall benefit will benefit us all. So back to the question there, my initial comment is that first we need to also accept that there is a clear departure in the presentation style of this finance minister.
What is that?
You know, finance ministers will give you overall budget, including sectorial outlook.
Indeed.
Performance and outlook.
Indeed.
He avoided that and more or less stated clearly on the floor of the House that sector ministers will present their policies and programs.
Okay.
That is good for me because he spent less than 2 hours to do that work instead of doing like 4 hours, which is good, is innovative. It's not, but what is missing, the drawback in my view is that we outsiders, we don't know the specific policy interventions and projects that sector ministers or ministries are going to undertake to alleviate the economic problems that we face. So that is, my recommendation would have been that you should have given us a summary of some highlights from the various sectors, so that at least we have a benefit of knowing. A typical example is now you've taken away 1D, 1F. I don't know whether we are collapsing it under 24-hour economy. I don't know, they are thinking about 24-hour economy, but somebody who is interested in policy design, I see that as a policy framework. Okay. So you can't get details from what they are going to present unless the sector ministers make their input into that. My second comment is also that I think that there is a trend, and that is my disappointment, that you can't say that there is a clear departure or an ambitious realignment of our budget. There's not. What you see is what I describe as a PR budget. This budget is PR driven, and you could see the euphoria in the system.
Yes, because if you say that, people, it's widely been accepted.
Exactly, that's the point I'm making.
Exciting,
but the details,
yeah, but
the details will tell you. Because if you look at for example, in 2017, when MPP took over, it was the same thing, if you remember. I mean, there was a jubilation in Makola market by the traders because of removal of an abosokai of certain taxes. What was the effect? It's because MPP inherited an IMF program, and NDC is the same. So you see that the macro data will tell you inflation is coming down, growth is up, you see depreciation of the currency is also coming down. So it gives you a signal. But if you're somebody who have followed the economic trajectory of our economy, it tells you that if you're a finance minister or you're a president, you have to be careful because you haven't changed anything. You haven't changed anything.
So
that's
really, it's not going to make any change. We're not going to feel anything.
You won't feel any significant because what will you benefit will be a jobless growth or a social growth.
Wow.
What it means is that, yes, you will report a single-digit growth rate, but you see that you are not creating jobs because the growth will be coming from the mining sector and less will be coming from a job-intensive or labor-intensive sector of the economy. So we need to really be guided by the way we prepare our budget. And that is why we advocated during our press conference that our philosophy is anchored on what we describe as an enterprise economy, where you give space to the private sector through fiscal and non-fiscal incentive support. And that is missing in this budget. I don't see anything clear, any stimulus for the private sector to grow, except few removal of taxes, which really I see as household.
Doesn't make any impact.
It will not make much.
Well, I'll come to you on what you say the finance minister covered from your highlights when you did your press conference. But let me come to Dr. Andres Bediako, who is a local governance expert. You've also been listening to the budget. Which aspects of it caught your attention?
Thank you very much, my sister. I think I'm not doctor yet.
Oh.
Yeah, so maybe...
I'm promoting you ahead of time.
Definitely.
Minister.
Okay. I think the minister has presented something that is constitutionally, that is the constitutional mandate of the minister. For that one, nobody can fault him. I think the area that I was just looking at, how we are not going to employ people into the public service this year.
Okay.
Because of the collapse of some of the ministries. What the minister is telling us that this year, public sector, we are not going to employ people there because of the collapse of some of the ministries. They have to realign some of the staff. So maybe if you were working at the Ministry of Information, definitely they have to, because there is no more Minister of Information, they have to look at where they will send you to. And I think we must address ourselves for something else. That one, I will leave it to the public to decide, and those who are typical politicians to see how best we can address those issues. But my interest in this budget is about the areas of the local governance structures and what the minister intends, the government intends doing at the local level.
Where he's even allocated about 7 billion Ghana cedis to the District Assembly Common Fund.
Yes. The minister is saying they are going to transfer 80% of the DACF to the assemblies. And I think it's a good thing.
Indeed.
Because most of our district assemblies have suffered for quite a long time. The pressure normally, you see, the local level is where the governance is.
Yes.
So if you take care of the local level, definitely the people will feel the governance system as expected of every government. So if you transfer 80% of the allocated resources to the assemblies, I think it's a good thing. But sometimes it is easier said than done. Is it going to happen? Because we are all looking at how best the minister can raise all these funds so that he can be in a position, because the law says that not less than 5% of the district, the revenue generated within the year should be transferred to these assemblies under a formula being determined by the District Assemblies Common Fund Administrator. So if you transfer the 80, meaning you are going to get all the money expected within the year. If you're able to get it, definitely you will be in a position to transfer those monies to the assemblies, and the assemblies can utilize it to do a lot of projects and programs at the local level. So it is good if the minister is able to do that, if we are able to raise the funding as expected, and we are able to send the 80%. Because as minister said, some 4 years ago, and even more than that, normally the budget will tell you that assemblies should present their budget. You present the budget, but when it gets to the point that the money should be transferred to you to implement the policies and the programs, the money doesn't come.
Yesterday on PM Express, the finance minister is sure that he will ensure disbursement of funds as he has promised in the budget. So I guess we'll have to give him time to prove himself, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yes.
I think it's a good thing that he's assuring us. But let us all pray that all those things will happen as expected or as he has indicated. And I think if he's able to do that, the assemblies have suffered for quite a long time. That's why I'm happy about the way, Joy, you have taken it upon yourself, that you have shown much interest in our local governance system or the decentralization. Because if our local level grows as expected, definitely the governance, where people put pressure on MPs and all those kind of things will even go out, because the confidence that they have is at the local level. And I think that is where we should be looking at. So if the finance minister is able to transfer the monies as expected, or as he has assured the people, I think it's going to go a long way to help the assemblies.
Indeed. We still have our guest on Zoom with us. And let me come back to you, Amma. Inflation and currency depreciation have significantly increase the cost of raw materials for manufacturers, especially in the private sector. Do you believe the budget's proposed fiscal measures will provide some stability for the long term?
I think we still need to look at the structural issues that we are facing. It's still cheaper to consume an imported good than to consume a locally produced good. And so we need private sector growth. We need local government interactions with industry, with tourism, and all of the revenue generating and productivity enhancing activities that we need in our local economies and nationally and regionally as well. Until we do that, I think we're kind of patching up and taking short-term measures that may be popular, but not really dealing with the fundamental challenges and in terms of the structure of our economy. So I think we need a bit more boldness. If we're looking at education, which we've all talked about so extensively today, it's such a priority in terms of the productivity of our people, right? Our young people, our locally assembly members, how do they even manage the resources that they have at the local level? What is the capacity to manage local resources? Government, state-owned enterprises and government ministries are very inefficient, as we know, very bloated in terms of the numbers of staffing there, but not necessarily as efficient as it could be. Education could be shaken up in terms of infrastructure. We talked about education infrastructure. How do we actually look at how we transform the way we educate our young people in a way that is maybe leveraging more efficient ways of educating a population of our nature and our size, right? We're still looking at very sort of 19th century education models. We should be looking at how we can leverage education in a new way to increase the efficiency of the way we distribute resources. We're talking about textbooks, we're talking about buildings, we're talking about infrastructure. Kids need to have an education system that can support them, okay? And so we need industries and, you know, entrepreneurs and problem solvers so they can really deal with the fundamental challenges of our country today. And so we can't rely on, you know, models that are 200 years old and maybe colonial in nature. We need to move forward as a country to establish more effective local government, more effective local industries, you know, better trade, better local industries, so that we can back up the private sector as we need to innovate in the areas of education, healthcare, food production, food distribution, logistics, trade. These are the fundamentals that we need to tackle to reduce our debt burden, our spending, and all the metrics that we're talking about today.
For me, what are your expectations regarding interest rates, seeing the decisions of the finance minister in the financial sector?
So I didn't hear that.
I was asking your expectation regarding interest rates based on the decisions in the budget that the finance minister has presented.
Well, you know, I see interest rates have come down a little bit. People are jubilating about that, but some are crying because, you know, if you're investing, you want to have a higher return on your treasury bills. But we can't continue to depend on T-bills, right? You know, right. Pension funds are investing in T-bills or government bonds. It's a very easy way to invest and get a return. It's a very safe, conservative way. But we're still suffering from this debt restructuring and some of the crises we've had over the past few years, right? So it means that it makes sense for, you know, institutional investors to diversify some of their assets under management to asset classes like venture capital, right? Ghana has really grown from the 90s until now. We have about $7 billion in pension funds, in venture capital and private equity funds locally. How do we untap some of that and encourage more trust and confidence in the venture capital and private equity asset class? It's something that we at the association, Ghana Venture Capital Association, it's here to do, to build that ecosystem of understanding and educating and building confidence in that particular asset class as a diversification strategy. And so in doing that, again, building local private capital confidence, building local currency funds and fund management capacity, we could then talk about attracting foreign investment, right? But if we don't invest in ourselves, in our productive industries, in our education, in our healthcare, the services that pensioners would actually themselves benefit from when they retire after, you know, years of working and toiling, you know, right now they get very little. So how do we create the companies and the innovations that will drive the service delivery that, you know,
what will be your solutions
provide?
Then? What would be your solutions? Maybe one or two. What would be your solutions briefly?
Yeah, we need to support the venture capital and private equity as an option, right? As an industry, we need to have the option to the high interest debt and loans that entrepreneurs are forced to take. If you're paying 25% interest rates as a business for your working capital, 30%, sometimes up to 40% in some of the rural areas, it's very difficult to grow and expand your business and create jobs, right? So private equity and venture capital is a route that I think we need to look into and promote and support to drive business growth and job creation.
Right. Perhaps, Ayang, are you care to comment on that?
Yes. What I will say is just a quick one on the structure of the budget. I was particularly happy yesterday because anytime you want to read something on agriculture, you have to go and read the whole budget, including the introduction and others. And it almost always removes ministers who are leading particular sectors from presenting the budget. So I'm particularly very happy that now I can pick one single document and I'm focused on the sector. It will make access to data quite easy. On the interest rate, one of my worries used to be the resort to treasury bills as the only source of investment, because as Amma rightly said, it's safe and convenient, and it more or less encouraged laziness in the financial sector, encourage banks not to take risks. So instead of lending to agriculture or other activities, they would go for treasury bills. You notice that since the beginning of this year, last year we saw some oversubscription, but it is this year that that oversubscription was combined with declining yields, which is largely due to the messaging of President John Dramani Mahama when he talked about cost cutting. Talked about reducing size of government. And you know, the financial world depends a lot on speculation. And once you get your posturing, your messaging, and your actions right, you take away that element of speculation. Right. I'm excited that I think that it will allow our banks and financial institutions to look into other areas. Interest rates declining also mean that, of course, it makes the cost of capital more accessible, so people can borrow to invest. Right. One key area that we need to look at, I see it as a low-hanging fruit, is the agricultural transformation. We have been growing agriculture, but we don't transform it. And it is the transformation of agriculture that is going to create jobs and allow people to grow out of agriculture into other sectors and for the economies to grow. So once you tackle agriculture, you can call it Akuko and Kiti, and it's funny, but once the Akuko and Kiti person makes money and is beginning to demand a TV, somebody in the media is going to get a job. Somebody in electricals is going to get a job. So the right approach is to start from the low-hanging fruits. We are importing so much chicken, and Akuko and Kiti could be a first step to solving that, and then freeing up resources for investment in other sectors.
Thank you so much, Professor Michael Ayamga. And let me take your concluding comments, Mr. Poultry.
Yeah, thank you very much. So for the National Union of Ghana Students, being the single largest group in this country representing the youth, our interest has always been in youth development, focusing on education, sports, entrepreneurship, and skills development. This budget does touch on almost every part of it. We are yet to hear the sectorial presentation for sports, but we look at it and it's promising. It gives hope for entrepreneurship, it gives hope for skills development, and that of education. Like I said, we are still engaging the policymakers to see if we can have a more sustainable funding dedicated to free SHS, freeing up more space for education infrastructure and the GETFund. But beyond that, everything is perfect and we are good to go.
Daniel Poultry, President for NUCS, and also Amajampo, CEO, Ghana Venture Capital and Equity Association. Well, let me come to the studio. Excuse me. Mr. Dr. Poultry, Edruchum, forgive me. I think that my throat is... Take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to News Desk, and we've been having discussions on the budget. We still have in the studio Mr. Andrews Bediako, local governance expert, and also Dr. Nanaya Wedrichun, spokesperson on economy for Movement for Change. And we're going to just conclude our conversation on the budget within about a minute. We have less than that. So we've been talking off air about allocations made in the budget. What's your reaction to that, very briefly?
Well, briefly, I would say that as I did indicate earlier, the new government did not learn much from the economic cyclical nature of our performance.
Okay.
You know, there are a lot of transfer payments, meaning that we are allocating funds to sectors which will not give us any significant output or return to the economy. We believe that, for example, the allocation to pay first year's admission fee, huge significant transfer to support
free senior high school,
free senior high, textbooks, capitation grant, school
Big
fee.
push.
Yes, these are all important, but you need to look at the timing because the economy currently, we are strangled. The IMF program itself is constrained in terms of the way we do allocations. But you relate that to what stimulus are we giving to the private sector. As Abuna said, you can't see any clear stimulus to the private sector. I would have been very happy if the government had allocated or established a stimulus fund which will ease access to credit to the private sector. Because currently, the lending rate is over 28%, which has even come down. How can you borrow to manufacture at that rate? It is not possible. I'm hoping that the 24-hour economy policy will outline some measures to stimulate the private sector, which will help us grow. And it should be targeted. I'm also happy that they did significant allocation to the agricultural sector. But the devil is in the details. In the details. How are they going to allocate, or which policy measures ensure that are going to fund, are going to use the money to fund to ensure that we have significant job creation? Right.
Mr. Bediako, briefly, you know there have been allocations to assembly members, some monies that will be given to them. Your take?
Yeah, I think it's good, but if we are going to pay allowances to the assembly members, meaning this Local Governance Act 936, we need some amendment. Because the allowances of assembly members, including the DL leader, the presiding member, the law is clear. It's been determined by the assemblies, but not government or not central government. So if government is taking up this allowances issue, I know for sure some of the assemblies are going to be free from the problems or the challenges that they go through in paying these allowances to some of the assembly members. Some of the assemblies even pay up to, let's say, 100 Ghana cedis at a sitting. If assembly member attends a meeting, you give him 100 Ghana cedis as an allowance. I don't think it's good. So if government, but we are looking at the numbers now. Now, if we put the numbers together, we have about 9,110 assembly members, both elected and appointees of the assembly, 30% from the government. So if you put the figures together, then you divide the 100 million as allocated, meaning it is going to be around some 1,000 Ghana cedis. Is it going to be monthly, or they are going to pay quarterly or yearly? So the minister should let us know all these things. Because if an assemblyman comes for assembly meeting and he's unable to access his allowance because now central government is taking it over, it's going to be a burden on the assembly, and all assembly members will not agree to some of these things. So as Doc said, the details, we should all get to know the details. But as I said initially, I am very happy about the 80% that the minister is saying he's transferring to the assemblies from the Disassemblies Common Fund. If he's able to do that, I think the assemblies are going to get resources to run. It shouldn't be a business as usual whereby somebody sits in Accra and determine, let me send fertilizer to assemblies, let me send cutlasses to assemblies. If, let's say...
It should be decentralized.
Yes, definitely. So that is the decentralization that we are talking about. So nobody should sit in Accra and determine what assemblies should use their resources for. So all these monies, if minister is able to mobilize the money, it should be transferred to the assemblies for them to do whatever they because assembly members approve their budget, so they know what they have approved. It's not the duty for anybody to sit in Accra and determine you need a borehole, let me send you a borehole, and procurement, all this procurement will be done in Accra. It doesn't help the assembly.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And we have here Mr. Andrews Bediako, local government expert, and Dr. Nanayao Edichu, spokesperson on economy for Movement for Change. We're grateful for their time here. Now, the Supreme Court will today determine a motion by Ernest Yakumi seeking to set aside an injunction by Koforidua High Court that bars him from holding himself as a member of Parliament for Equatorial without first purging himself of contempt at the High Court. The 5-member panel could not rule on the motion last month due to doubts about their capacity. Justice Pauman, the sole dissenting judge, in February, when the Apex Court stayed the sentencing of Ernest Yakumi, the Koforidua High Court insisted that the Supreme Court could not grant him an audience while he remained in contempt. Also, we know that Ms. Cecilia Dapa will be in court today, taking the stand again and giving testimony about missing monies in her home. Let's do climate focus now. Rising temperatures driven by climate change are posing a serious threat to poultry farming in Doma East District, Bono region, where farmers have experienced severe losses due to heat stress in recent months. As temperatures soared, poultry mortality rates increased, threatening both livelihoods and food security in the area. In response, the Department of Agriculture has introduced interventions to mitigate the impact of extreme heat. These measures include the adoption of cooling systems to regulate temperatures in poultry houses, offering much-needed relief to birds and significantly reducing mortality rates. Mohammed Nuruddin has more for Climate Focus.
Heat stress may be our farmer. Na near me who say a heat stress, you know.
This season I encountered heat stress. I noticed it when I entered the poultry house around 3 p.m. I saw the birds panting, opening their beaks and making unusual sounds. I also observed that 9 birds were lying in the litter, struggling to walk. The early signs of heat stress include slight gasping. If preventive actions are not taken, within 3 days, the birds will cease eating and drinking.
Extreme heat has devastated farmers here at Doma East, wiping out flocks and leaving many with losses or even debt. In the face of adversity, these farmers have found hope and innovation in the most unlikely of places. Christiana is one of the poultry farmers.
Heat stress impacts our finances significantly. It results in high mortality rate, causes the eggs to become very soft and break easily, and leads to reduced egg production. The veterinary team led by Robert is doing an excellent job, and they visit regularly without needing to be invited. When we contact the agriculture department, they respond positively. They taught us to add ash blocks to the water before giving it to the birds and advise us to gradually pump water into the tank to prevent it from heating up.
Farmers like Christiana, alongside many others in Doma East, are adopting new cooling systems to protect their investments. These systems reduce the deadly heat stress that claimed so many poultry in previous years. Here is Thompson.
When the drinking water becomes hot, it can contribute to heat stress. So I decide not to use the iron sheets for roofing the water tank. Instead, I planted trees around the tank to provide shade. I use that cooler water to supply to the birds. With the high temperatures now, we have always added ash blocks to the birds' drinking water. This helps cool their systems, offering them relief from the heat just like humans.
In addition to cooling systems, the farmers are also planting trees around their poultry houses. The trees serve as a natural shade and wind breaks, further lowering temperatures in and around the poultry farms. This combination of cooling techniques and tree planting is proving to be an effective solution. Farmers are already reporting positive results.
The
heat is everywhere. Thanks to the training we received as poultry farmers, we learned to add ash blocks to the water to help cool the bird systems. After 12 p.m., we start using the ashed water to lower their body temperature. This approach has helped me reduce losses on my farm.
The new methods are not only helping farmers safeguard their poultry, but are also contributing to a more sustainable farming environment.
Cool water, cool clean water, increasing your water points, the water truck during heat stress, then reducing the number of animals you place per space. If you have been placing like 10 per
Sustainable practices is proving to be the key to resilience in a rapidly changing world. a district where poultry farmers once struggled to survive the heat, has found a way to thrive. The poultry farmers' hopes are growing not just in the trees, but in the hearts of their colleagues who know that with every shade each tree provides and every cooling water from the mixture of ice blocks, they are taking another step towards a sustainable future. A report by Mohamed Nuruddin.
Climate Focus is brought to you by Joy News in partnership with Youth Bridge Foundation, bridging gaps for positive youth development, and the Climate Development Knowledge Network.
And that's it for News Desk this morning. I am Amiesi Nyamiche Thompson. See you tomorrow.